Are you interested in innovative education and diversity in school models? Do you see a need for something different to bring about a reformation in our current education system? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join us as we discuss what's trending with unconventional learning models, including microschools, homeschool co-ops, creative learning centers, hybrid school models, and so much more. I am your host, Delina Wallace, president and founder of Wichita Innovative Schools and Educators, also known as WISE. This podcast, Wise and Otherwise, explores what our local hub of education entrepreneurs are doing in Wichita. We will also explore and offer brief introductions to the many local and national organizations that support innovation in education. Welcome to Wise and Otherwise. Okay, this morning I have Kyle Ellison with the Wichita Learning Lab. He's actually with the Con Lab School. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll be housed inside of the Wichita Learning Lab, though.
That's right. I was just with Lydia this morning. We were talking about the Learning Lab itself, the facility and the space, but we know that you're going to be one of the first tenants there. And the director, what's your actual role at the Con Lab School?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, founding director for Con Lab School, Wichita, not to be confused with the founder, Sal Khan of Con
Right.
Lab School and Khan Academy.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Let's just imagine for a minute that people have not heard of Sal Khan. They don't know about Khan Academy, and they don't know, or maybe if they've heard of Khan Academy, that's been around for a while, and some of the online courses and things like that, they don't know much about what a Khan Lab School would be. So let's start. Why don't you give us kind of an intro, what you know about Khan Academy and the Khan Lab School?
For sure. Yeah, you hit it exactly right, especially when I'm talking to a lot of people in the Wichita area about Khan Lab School coming. The first thing that they reference is like, oh, Khan Academy. And so then, and I'm like, yep. And so they're familiar with like that online platform, which is, an amazing tool and resource to engage kids in a different way, a different style of learning. And and it's again like a tool and a resource. Sometimes people kind of mistake it like it's the be all end all, and I don't believe that was Sal's like intention. But again, something that teaches differently is what the Khan Academy does, and so he in the beginning also had this. By the way, like the way I feel about Sal, what I tell people is he's, in my opinion, he's like a Steve Jobs of like education. Like he's kind of like one of those people,
Yes.
And so, he had the vision and the belief that Khan Academy and like this thought process of mastery learning and some of the like real world application could go further than just an online tool. And he believed like, no, I think this could literally be like an everyday style of school. And so there came this concept of Khan Lab School, and lab part of it really is, sometimes people think like, oh, it's science or something like that, but it's not that. It's just about the sense that education can be experimental. You can experiment with the style of teaching, the style of learning, and be open to change. And there's different variables. Some you can control and some you can't control. And so, on any, it's so funny. I've gone out to California to visit them and observe, and it's literally like on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they could be doing it this way. And then third, it's like, oh, you know what? You need to shift because the students responded to this certain thing better. So then Thursday, Friday, it's like a totally like different style, right? And I think it's cool. And people, you kind of have to be agile and willing to pivot, but I think that's what makes it unique.
Well, I never really thought about the use of the word lab, Khan Lab School. Honestly, I just thought it was cool. I thought it sounded good. But that is great. Yeah, I love hearing the reason behind that. The reasoning there is because it basically is an experiment and something that we can experiment with as educators. We can constantly get creative, be innovative, and explore along with our students and the learners, like what's working, what's not, and pivot and change as we need to and make adjustments. So that's exciting. How are you feeling about things? Tell me before we talk about, as the school will be starting up, you said you'll be opening for registration and enrollment starting in January. It's November now. Yeah, so January 2024, it's coming up. But before we talk about like as you start to launch with enrollment and registration, tell us more about yourself as your background with education or no background with education or whatever. What's your interest and
Yeah.
why are you interested in this role?
Yeah, for sure. Little background about me, no educational experience other than going to school myself. I'm definitely more from the business side in the business sector. Prior to this role, I ran a nonprofit called Heroes Academy. Formerly, it was Real Men, Real Heroes, but we made some changes during my time there. And then prior to that, I worked for AT&T in corporate sales management. And um, but I've always had a desire to help young people. And when I was during my time at Heroes Academy, we would do in school and after school mentoring. And sometimes when I would go into the schools and, in all honesty, it'd be things that remind me of when I was a kid, when I'd see the kid whose desk was at the front or the classroom door, right? Because they're probably disruptive or distractions. They can't, for whatever reason, right? The teacher felt like that was where it placed. Like I was that kid for sure. Kicked out of class all the time, all this stuff. And so anyway, when I go into the schools, I would just see these different situations that just reminded me of school for myself. And I thought about it and doing a lot of community work. I think about how parents and families will put their kids in kind of after school programs and things to kind of fill in some of the gaps, right, from like a social aspect or a community aspect, and or just that they're not able to fulfill in their household. And I just started thinking to myself, man, what if school and like community programming could be brought together and be just integrated into the education, and
Awesome.
yeah, and so that's what got my wheels spinning about it. And I remember one really quick story. When I was a kid, middle school, got in trouble for something like stupid. It was stupid, but the school, they wanted to kick me out. And my mom's like, no, he needs to stay here. And they were like, well, we'll let him stay here, but he needs to get cleared by a psychiatrist. So I go to the psychiatrist. I have to do all these hours, and since I'm there, my mom is like, hey, can you evaluate him for school? Like his grades aren't great. He's always getting in trouble, disrupting class, this and that. And so they do these evaluations, and ultimately, they tell my mom, they're like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, other than the fact like he's really smart. He has a college reading level, and this is like again, I was in middle school. They were like, school is just boring to him,
Yeah.
and he's getting in trouble because he's trying to find ways to entertain himself." And so I just thought to myself, I never forgot that story. And what I think is like, how many kids is that maybe the scenario? And if we could figure out a way to do education and teach them the core things they need to learn, but do it in ways that are of interest to them,
Right.
how much more of a success rate we could have. So that's in a
Exactly.
nutshell my story.
Exactly. No, I love it. Yeah, I really liked when you were talking about just that integration of community life, learning, bringing
Mhm.
the family together and all of that. Personally, I'm feeling the same way. And just as I've been, with my journey as a homeschooling mom, also operating like a homeschool co-op and then a micro school, and just really interested in innovative education, really all about mixing it up all the time. When you hear about
Absolutely.
that term, like a hybrid school
Hmm.
model, that would be kind of our style for our family. We're piecing things together. But I also feel like what we've learned as a family, my husband and I and our kids together, like I own a business, my husband's a CEO of business, so business life. Then we're also very active in our church life. Then we've got the school life. Then we've got the family life. But I really feel like integrating all of these things rather than compartmentalizing. And again, as a homeschool family, we're able to really do that. We're
Hmm.
teaching our kids, they're kind of seeing us operating in our business as we're active in our churches, our home life, our family life, our schooling. It's all wrapped in and, together because that's what life is. We're always learning and living in community and time with our family and all of it. So I think that that's another thing that we can learn in this whole great experiment together. We're just, school doesn't have to be about like, okay, now the kids leave the house and they go do their thing at this school from these hours, and it looks like this, and here's their desk, all that. Um,
Absolutely.
so I love it. It sounds like you've got that same vision there with education.
Thank you. Yeah, and I love what you said, right? Like I I feel that school, and I mean, and again, I don't like I could be wrong, but I'm willing to be wrong, and that's okay with me. But I really feel school, we always talk about schools like preparing, young people for, and I'm not one that's like, oh, preparing them like to go get a job, but preparing them for life and how to be like a
Right.
productive citizen and be able to find their path and their journey, right? And I think sometimes some environments, educational environments, in my opinion, don't reflect like life and
Right.
real world things. And it's funny on that note. I always think about failure, right, with grades. If you get an F, or if it's you're disruptive. And I just always think it's so funny because those were like I mean, I don't know if I got F's, but that was like the end of the world if you did. But I was definitely disruptive. That was on every progress report, class clown, all those things.
You're still
And
disruptive, right?
yes, and
There you
that's
go.
where I was gonna go with it. I was like, when I was in
Right.
school, this was the worst thing in the world. But
Yeah.
when we grow up and we do things that are disruptive or
Mhm.
innovative, or even when we try things and fail, the most successful people in the world tell you that's how they got to success. So to me, I'm like okay with failure. I'm okay with kids because that means they tried. We know that way
Yeah.
didn't work. So let's find the way that does work. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's going to be so fun to be in your school. Tell us a little bit what it's going to look like. What are you excited to see happen there? What do you envision? Now, I know it's just going to be like we'll take it and we'll see how it evolves and how
Yeah.
the learners what they need and all of that. But tell us a little bit. Give us a picture of a day there at Con Lab School.
Yeah, for sure. I think initially, some things that are really important to me is like the social impact part. One of the things that we're literally building out kind of some curriculum things right now, and you could definitely expect to see some project-based learning. I feel like at least every other week, kids should be probably coming home with something, to show their families and this and that. But like, for example, the first 6 weeks of class might be around the food desert here in Wichita, right? And truly embracing that, right? So I mean, and then we figure out how to incorporate their math into this food desert and obviously, humanities and science and when what all does that encompass, right? But then it's not just learning about it, history of it, how we got here, then where we are currently. But then it's like, well, if we could do something, and this brings in a critical thinking piece, like what could we do? What could we do to maybe help solve for something like this? And then the coolest part to me is actually putting it into action. Like I don't want to just come up with like, oh, here's a business idea or here's a no, like let's as a group come up with something that we could actually really go do or try to enforce and implement, right? And so you'll see a lot of it. You'll see in a day in the life, each class, the kids will if you think about it mentally, because it's not, I don't want to set it up like the class would be this way, but there'll be stations, where they're doing stuff online, then they're doing stuff that's creative to them, whether it's creating a song or if it's a podcast or a video of some sort. But then also getting that one-on-one time with their teacher to fill in any gaps that might be happening, or they might be ahead and it's like, okay, like they need to get with the teacher and strategize. And I think one big thing I could say too, that you'll see at the school is hopefully, with a mastery style of learning, if any kids fall behind, we believe very much that, everyone's a student, everyone's a teacher. And so the hope is that if we have kids who are thriving, that there'll be more peer-to-peer help and that the teacher's really there almost like as a last resort. Maybe the first
Mhm.
the first kind of let me set the tone, here's some instruction, now y'all go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then if there's some gaps, lean on your peers to help fill those gaps. So that's
Yeah.
just a quick version of how I see it in my
Yeah.
head.
So, okay, so I haven't really asked you about this, or maybe I can't remember if we've talked about it. Will there be like a hired teacher and how many, and what will the grade, like, will the grades be segregated?
For
Kind of
sure.
what's that going to look like?
Yeah. Awesome. So starting up the first year, we're going to be fourth through ninth grade, and it will be mixed. So there will be fourth and fifth grade will be one cohort. Sixth, seventh, eighth will also be one cohort, and then ninth grade will be one cohort. And then as the high schoolers matriculate, then we'll add on those grades. So ninth,
Mhm.
10th, 11th, 12th. And teacher wise, I'm gonna be starting with two or three, depending on what I can. You got budget things you got to figure out, right? But if we can make it happen two or three, and then the cool thing about our high school program, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, like it's going to be a hybrid situation. So our students, they'll have classmates that are in San Francisco and other places as Con Lab School potentially grows in other cities and whatnot. And so the hybrid model is something that we're really excited about. And there's going to be a lot of real world applications. So those high school kids will also get to participate in some of those experiences that we'll be providing as well, and not just be limited to the hybrid circumstances.
Yeah, that sounds really great. What's the schedule going to be like? Is this like a 5 day a week? Are there part-time options?
Yeah, so it's really cool, and we'll see how all this works. Again, like this is all tentative, right?
Yeah.
5 days a week. What's really cool is on Fridays, and the way I see it, I'm going to do it based off of maturity level and not so much age. I'm really big on providing access and experiences as early as possible.
Mhm.
So on Fridays, there'll be half days actually where the kids will be able to leave and go to like a job shadow or actual internship that they're working in a field that they have interest in, that they're passionate about. And so I'm really excited about that and what that'll do for them. And again, just applying like school, like literally transferring school to real life again, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, Monday through Friday, definitely. And then still working out when we're going to start. There's something I got to figure out. I don't know whether it's going to be 8:30 to 4 type of situation. We will have an extended day where we go till 6 because we definitely want to make it where it's helpful to parents who might not get off work till 5 o'clock or
Sure.
5:30. So that's where we are right now.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds good. Um, and then as far as their time, they'll do some of their courses online. I'm assuming using Khan Academy with
Mhm.
the material there. Okay. I think you said that earlier. And then with the hands-on and the project-based learning, do you have it in your mind like, oh, we'll do this part during this time of the day and then we'll transition and we'll put away like all our core subjects and our online learning and then we'll transition or is it going to flow? You see
Yeah,
kids just
that's
kind of
it.
going in and out of that
Yeah, it's gonna flow. If you think about I don't know, a class, what's a typical class time, a period? What would you say?
60 to 90 minutes. Some
60
of
to
it's
90
just
minutes.
50, 55. I guess it kind of depends on the subject, really.
Okay. So the way, like in my mind that I see it, we'll go with 60. I would love it if, I mean, honestly, I think if I'm thinking about our schedule right now, I want to say we're doing blocks. So I think they are more around that 90.
Hmm.
But it's where, maybe the first 15 to 20 minutes is instructional. And then those things I talked about when it's like, if they're working on a project, um, the lesson from the teacher should flow into that project. It should also flow into their online learning, and then as well as their collaborative stuff. So it it isn't every class period. All four of those things should be
Okay.
happening every
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That'll be great. Well, that's
Thanks.
amazing. Do you guys have a website? Where can people go when they want to learn more about your school?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for asking. It is
Yeah.
klswichita.org. The KLS is for Khan Lab School. And we're also on social media. Everything is at KLS Wichita. So
Great. Okay. Well, anything else you have to share? Anything I didn't cover or ask you about? or did
No,
we
other
hit on everything?
yeah, no, we did. I would just say I appreciate you and everything you're doing and the population you represent. And I think you giving a platform for people who are trying to just offer alternatives to different learning styles and teaching styles. Those people should be commended. So thank you for doing what you do.
You're welcome. It's been so great getting to know you, Kyle. I'm glad you're part of the WISE group. I'm glad you're in Wichita. I'm so excited for your school to launch, and we will just stay in touch and see how it's going. We'll check in with you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lena. I appreciate you.
All right.